Good morning, Houdat Nation, and a special Sunday morning to our Bayou Blitz family. A happy regular season finale Sunday morning. I hope everybody is doing well out there for this first Saints game of 2024. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your co-hosts to your Bayou Blitz pregame show. I'd like to welcome in my friend, co-host, and partner in crime, Brendan Boylan. Brendan, happy regular season finale Sunday.
Have they been very happy though? Like
No.
maybe the last 2 years, have they been very happy? Maybe the tides will change today. Happy season finale to you as well, or regular season finale. Very familiar territory for the Saints coming into today. Need a win and some help additionally. We will go over those playoff scenarios with you guys, but we do want to start with the breaking news. And it's as official as it can get without being officially official. And we'll throw it across the bottom of the screen. Alvin Kamara not expected to play today, had that high ankle sprain that he suffered last week against Tampa Bay. Bob, you alluded to this possibility a little earlier in the week with some of your articles talking about the potential of Kamara not playing and the importance of Kendre Miller. Miller expected to play for the first time in quite a while. What does this mean for the New Orleans Saints? Obviously, Kamara, maybe the most prolific player on the offensive side of the football, but how does that change the scheme and the strategy going in against this Atlanta Falcons team?
It changes it quite a bit, but the good news is the Saints have known that this was going to take place. Yeah, we mentioned it on our telecast on Wednesday. I said it in a radio show first thing Monday morning. I expected the Saints to be very coy with Kamara's availability all week. I didn't expect him to practice. Expected the team to list him as a game time decision, but I personally would have been shocked, if Alvin was able to play, and even if he were, it'd be probably nothing more than a decoy. I mean, you all saw the nature of how that injury took place. A high ankle sprain is the dreaded phrase for any NFL skill position player, especially one of Kamara's skill set. A very shifty runner, relies on his cutback ability, and his ability to make defenders miss. So, like I said, I do believe that changes the game plan quite a bit. But I also have a strong feeling that if the Saints coaches had working brain cells in their heads, that they knew that this was going to take place all week, so they were able to design their game plan around it. Jamal Williams is going to be going to take on the brunt of the backfield load. Williams has had let's just call a spade a spade. He's had a poor season, far below expectations that all of us had for him when the Saints signed him away from the Detroit Lions last offseason. But Williams and Kamara are two vastly different runners. Williams is strictly north-south, power runner between the tackles. Doesn't offer you much more in the passing game than an occasional screen or check down threat. But that's why I felt Kendre Miller would be key. Now, Kendre has missed the last 7 games himself with a high ankle sprain. But when we saw him, when we saw him last on the field healthy, which feels like forever ago, Kendre hasn't done much in the running game because he hasn't been asked to. But where he has flashed is his explosiveness as a receiver. 2 or 3 plays in particular come to mind. One play, I think it was against the Green Bay Packers. Another against the New England Patriots, probably his best play of the season. And then the play he got injured on, ironically, against the Chicago Bears, I believe. So Kendre's best skill set is a lot of what Alvin Kamara brings to this offense. I'm not suggesting Kendre Miller is Alvin Kamara by any stretch of the imagination, but he can. Some of the play designs that they do for Kamara, especially out of the backfield as a receiver, we might see that out of Kendre Miller today. We might see Rashid Shaheed on some swing passes and wheel routes, out of the backfield in a shotgun formation, and then of course, I think everybody expects that Taysom Hill will be much more involved as a runner, certainly than he has been the last 3 weeks when he's gotten a combined 5 carries. So it's going to be a running back by committee today. And again, none of these guys are Alvin Kamara. So, You need to run the ball to establish the balance, offensive balance. But I expect this game plan to be heavily revolving around Derek Carr, the passing game, and quick rhythmic passes to get this offense in a groove.
And you see the injury report officially dropped. There are some of your bigger names on the list are guys that were questionable coming in. Kamara out, Keith Kirkwood out, Landon Young out, Lonnie Johnson also out for the New Orleans Saints, joining Jake Hayner, who was expected to be inactive. Monty Rice and defensive end Kyle Phillips. That is your official injury report for the New Orleans Saints today, which does mean, as we were talking about, and as expected, Kendre Miller will be active today for the first time in quite a while. We'll see if number 25 can put on a vintage 25 performance against the Falcons. Yes, I'm referring to Reggie Bush, who had plenty of multiple score touchdown days against the Atlanta Falcons back in his day in the black and gold. He also had an interesting podcast interview the other day. We won't go too far into that, but if you guys want to check that out, talking about how he fully expected he was going to the Houston Texans, didn't talk to a single other franchise during the draft process, and it was the Texans that hired a private investigator that warned them to not draft Reggie Bush. How weird is that? How weird is that? Go check out that podcast interview. I don't know which podcast it was on. But going back to today's game, Bob, as I said, this is familiar territory for the Saints. So let's break down these playoff situations and scenarios. Quickly wanted to say good morning to Eric and Elite. Thanks for hanging out with us per usual today on this Sunday morning. So for the Saints to win the NFC South, the Saints would have to defeat or tie the Atlanta Falcons. And the Tampa Bay Bucks would have to lose to the Carolina Panthers here today. Maybe unfortunate news. I was talking to you guys earlier the week about the weather forecast here in Charlotte. None of that rain came. So it is a nice day here in Charlotte. So if you guys were hoping for a sloppy football game that the Panthers might squeeze out that way, that doesn't look like it's going to happen today. But I digress. Bob, that's the easiest way to the NFC South. Both those games are going to be played at 1 o'clock today. So we will know about 4:30, 5 o'clock whether the Saints have won the NFC South or not. The rest of the time, we'll have to cross our fingers and toes and hope for some results in the 4:30 slot. But the Saints can make this really easy, take care of their business and scoreboard watch. Bob, what's the easier path? Is it the NFC South or is it the wild card?
The NFC South Championship is certainly the preferred path because you're guaranteed at least one home playoff game, next week in the wild card round. Looking ahead, if you win that, win your divisional game on the road, and certain things break your way, you could potentially host the NFC Championship game. Now, I realize that's reaching way far ahead. I will give it a second for our Bayou Blitz family to settle down your laughter. Okay, caught up? All right. The other path, certainly more complicated, involves the Saints winning, the Buccaneers winning, which gives Tampa Bay the NFC South. But then in the 4 o'clock games, in the mid-afternoon kickoff games, if Seattle loses at Arizona and Green Bay loses at Chicago, then New Orleans would become the final wild card team, the number 7 seed. If that scenario plays out, then the Saints would have to go on the road next week to either Philadelphia or Dallas, whichever team wins the NFC South. So, obviously, the most important thing is getting in the dance because you can't win a championship unless you get into the playoffs in the first place. But again, certainly the more preferred path would be winning your division and having at least one home playoff game guaranteed to you.
Yeah, and let's be honest. The NFC, what we used to say was the NFC least, not that long ago, all of a sudden is pretty strong. Dallas is not a team you necessarily want to play in the playoffs. And going to Philadelphia, yes, they're on a little bit of a slump, losing, 4 of their last 5. But weather conditions, a team that has been to a Super Bowl recently, there's a lot there that you don't really want to go in and play necessarily. Being able to host would be far more preferred, as you said, Bob. Let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons. They have had an interesting season, to say the least. Back and forth with some quarterbacks, right, between Heineke and Desmond Ritter. Arthur Smith on the hot seat, the head coach, Bijan Robinson. A lot of people really excited to see him in the Atlanta Falcons system. Hasn't been used very well. Cordero Patterson, a guy who was a fantasy football must pick up a few years ago, all of a sudden not being utilized the way that he was starting to get some national attention. The defense is okay, but hasn't really gained any traction after losing some key pieces of their roster from the last few years. Bob, this is a team that I would say is almost in a similar situation as the Saints. Obviously, similar records, head coaches on hot seats, and not really. The only difference is the Falcons really don't know who their quarterback is.
Mhm.
And that is an issue that dates back to what the old, I don't want to say old because that you might take offense to that, but the Dallas Cowboy days of having quarterbacks switch out every drive, and that started the whole theory: if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have an offense, and if you don't have an offense, you're not winning football games. I see it kind of similar for the Atlanta Falcons, Bob, and they've hit on some picks, right? Bijan Robinson looks like a great pick. Kyle Pitts looks like a great pick, but it's really been the utilization of those players as of late. Do you see this being an opportunity for the Saints defense to have a really good game, a revenge game against a team that really embarrassed them earlier in the season?
I see that potential, but the first thing the Saints are going to have to do is win the line of scrimmage and defend the run, because realistically, that's the only way that the Atlanta Falcons can stay in the game, not only against New Orleans, but pretty much any opponent that they face. And they want to run the ball. There's no question about that. They have built this unit to be a physical offense, taking control of the line of scrimmage, and they have a trio of really talented backs. You mentioned Bijan Robinson, who's just shy of 1,000 yards coming into this game, but Tyler Algier, who both of us really like, 1,000-yard runner last year as a rookie. Cordero Patterson, we know what he's capable of doing, both as a receiver and a runner. And you're talking about first-round picks in Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, the wide receiver, and three of your 5 offensive linemen are number 1 picks, with the 4th being number 2. And yet the Atlanta Falcons continue to stumble and bumble, through seasons offensively, really ever since Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones left. We know what their identity, what they want their identity to be. But if you stop that, they don't have any counterpunch for you. But stopping it is going to be the key, especially for New Orleans. We know the Saints have struggled against the run all year, although in 2 of the last 3 weeks they played extremely well against the run. I think more noteworthy is that the last 3 times that the Falcons and Saints met, the Falcons have run for well over 200 yards, on the ground. So they have just physically manhandled the Saints, front 7 in the trenches, and had their way with them for the most part. So while on paper you think to yourself, oh, if you stop the run, you stop the Falcons. Yes, that is true, but the Saints have to prove that they could stop the run.
And just the note, since we're talking about quarterbacks, Taylor Heineke inactive today. So it will be Desmond Ritter getting the start for the Atlanta Falcons. He was the quarterback the last time these two teams met. I want to talk about the psyche. We've talked a lot about Derek Carr this year. We've talked a lot about Jameis Winston this year, and just the psyche of quarterbacks. A little bit of a different situation in Atlanta, where you have a young quarterback that you drafted on day 2 in Desmond Ritter, who was handed the keys to the kingdom late last year, first full year as a starter, and he hit some bumps in the roads. And instead of riding through it, the Falcons decide to sit him down for a veteran in Taylor Heineke, who's had his moments in the NFL. But Ritter has since been bumped back and forth again as a young quarterback. Where do you think his mental psyche is coming into a game where the Falcons can still win the NFC South with the Saints loss today? They beat the Saints, and a Tampa Bay loss to Carolina. So Ritter's coming into the game as the quarterback for a team, like I said, that has the potential to still win the division.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Atlanta has every bit as much to play for as the New Orleans Saints do today, and you do have to wonder about the psyche and the confidence of young Desmond Ritter. It's one thing to be drafted to. He fell a lot. From his projected draft status. 2 years ago when the Falcons selected him. And it's one thing to come to a franchise and you're not the guy right away. You're not the starter right away. You can accept that. But then when he got the keys towards the end of last season, as you said, his play was up and down. But then you go into the offseason and there's all kinds of rumors that Atlanta's looking at Lamar Jackson. Atlanta might draft a quarterback in the first round. Atlanta might do this. Atlanta might go after Baker Mayfield. So what goes through Desmond Ritter's mind then? Well, obviously none of that occurred. Desmond Ritter starts the season, gets benched once for Taylor Heineke. Heineke plays so-so. Keys given back to Ritter. Ritter gets the starts for, I think, 3 or 4 weeks in a row. He's benched again for Taylor Heineke. So it's obvious that the Atlanta Falcons do not feel like Desmond Ritter is their quarterback. How's Desmond respond now, especially with the playoffs on the line? Heineke dealing with an ankle injury that, if Atlanta makes the playoffs, puts his status in doubt for, with only 1 week turnaround before you have to play a postseason game. So, Ritter is essentially playing a playoff game, not only today, but potentially next week if things roll right for Atlanta. How do you go? I mean, you're talking about professional athlete now. No matter what string you are, first, second, third string, practice squad, it is your job to be both mentally and physically ready. But again, to be suiting up for a franchise that you has no confidence in you, how's he going to respond physically to that, especially if he and his offense face some adversity early in this game?
Something we'll have to keep an eye out, keep in your minds, because like you said, yes, professional athletes, it's your job. Young 20-year-old kid with not a whole lot of confidence, that's the human aspect of it. As well. So if things go south early on, we'll be curious to see how Ritter mentally bounces back. You mentioned the Falcons and their ability to run the football against this New Orleans Saints team. And you and I have referenced this a few times this year. This was not the case for the Saints team. It was like a 48-49 game. Maybe it got in the 50 game
something.
stretch.
54.
54, it got that high of not allowing an 100-yard rusher. And now all of a sudden it's like the dam broke, the floodgates opened, and that was that. The Saints can't stop the run to save their life, it seems. Coming against this team, you mentioned Bijan Robinson. You mentioned a guy that I really like in Tyler Algier. This is a talented group that has already embarrassed the Saints once. Saints got a little healthier on the defensive line. Peyton Turner is going to be active today. We've seen Brian Brissy play really well his rookie year, earning some rookie honors. I believe that you wrote about as well this week. Mm-hmm. What can the Saints do scheme-wise to try to slow down this Falcons attack?
Scheme-wise, it wouldn't surprise me if the Saints brought a safety down into the tackle box. We mentioned Desmond Ritter and the underachieving Atlanta receivers. I think the Saints should feel like that they can drop an extra defender down in the tackle box and still have enough coverage talent to keep those Atlanta pass catchers in check. Now, who is it going to be? We've often seen it be Tyrann Mathieu. I personally think that would be a huge mistake. At this point in his career, Tyrann Mathieu is best suited as a deep safety where he can read the quarterback, react and be the last line of defense. While Mathieu still has outstanding instincts and awareness, I'm going to put it as mildly and politically correct as I can and borrow the phrase from our friend Tyrone Hughes, who used this exact phrase about Tyrann Mathieu last season when we had him on the Bayou Blitz. That Tyrann Mathieu makes a lot of business decisions at this point in his career as a tackler. So you want a guy that's going to be a thumper, and keep that runner from getting to the second level. And that guy, to me, is Jonathan Abram, who, by contrast, if I want Tyrann Mathieu back in coverage, Jonathan Abram is literally the last guy I want in coverage. So I drop Jonathan Abram down there, play him as an extra linebacker. Your defensive linemen, they have to win their matchups. Schematically, you mentioned, in addition to bringing Abram down in the box, I basically run a lot of run blitzes, and send extra defenders up the middle and on the inside. Yes, I know Cordero Patterson and Bijan Robinson are highly athletic runners and can get to the outside and off tackle, where the Saints have struggled against runners the most this year. But the way I see it, if you get fast interior penetration, especially by bringing extra defenders in, that's going to blow up running plays before they get started. Those off tackle plays, those pitches out wide, they take a little bit longer to develop. And if you get interior penetration, at the very least, that's going to force a runner to alter their path, to swing it out a little bit wider, and give your pursuit a chance to catch up. So winning the inside battles and bringing extra defenders in, and attacking the interior of Atlanta's line, I think, is the key to stopping their running game today.
Now let's flip that for the Falcons defense. They've been a thorn in the side for the Saints at times. And obviously Jesse Bates and the pick 6 in the first matchup. But this is a Falcons defense that's had to adjust, pivot a little bit without Deion Jones. A guy that was a staple of that defense for a long time. Now, they still have a lot of nice pieces, don't get me wrong, but this is a team that is not the same identity of Falcons defenses that were remembered. And, I mean, you could go through the head coaches, but, you think of like the Mike Smith era and some of those teams and look at it now, and it's not the same Falcons DNA, but still a dangerous defense. We saw the Saints offense struggle mightily against them the first time they matched up. The Saints did not score a touchdown. Do you feel like the Saints offense has got better since that point? And if not, what are some things the Saints could do today to find the end zone, to sniff out the end zone without Alvin Kamara, their best offensive weapon?
Well, and that's the thing. Yeah, anytime you're without a guy like Alvin Kamara, you can't look at the pieces that you have and say that you have a better offense than you did 5 weeks ago back in week 12. So the Saints will certainly have to make adjustments accordingly. Do I think that they can move the ball against Atlanta, though? Absolutely, I do. Because, back in that week 12 loss, the Saints had almost 450 yards of total offense. Derek threw for over 300 yards, but the Saints themselves also rushed for 148 as a team. That was their second highest total of this season. And in 9 possessions against the Falcons, not including a kneel down at the end of the half. So in their other 9 possessions, they got well within Falcons territory 8 times. They only came away with 5 field goals, no touchdowns, a missed field goal, and turned the ball over twice inside the 10. So you have to convert your opportunities, your scoring chances when you get into the Atlanta red zone. I know for a fact that former Saints defensive coordinator, now Falcons defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen, we saw that we saw this in the first matchup. I mentioned how I believe that the Saints should attack the Falcons interior. I know Ryan Nielsen is going to do the same. Every opponent has, and frankly, with great success, because Cesar Ruiz, Eric McCoy, James Hurst, they've been awful this year. They unable to get consistent push in the running game. Sorry, guys. Unable to get consistent push in the running game. Absolutely helpless against interior twists, interior stunts, when in pass protection. And individually, they've all had a lot of moments where they look like human turnstiles for pass rushers and run defenders. So Ryan Nielsen is going to attack you that way. when you throw the ball, you have to get that ball out on time. And we've seen Derek do a great job of that in the last handful of weeks. You have to do that, which means your receivers have to win their matchups quickly. Even when the Falcons do bring extra defenders in the box, whether you're running the football with Taysom Hill, Jamal Williams, or even Kendre Miller, your line needs to win those initial battles, at least get a little bit of push at the line of scrimmage, give your runners 3, 4, 5 yards a pop, really before they're getting tackled, because the Falcons defense does do a great job of swarming to the ball. They have a very physical front seven, led by former Saints David Onyemata, and Caden Ellis, who are each among, the team's tackle leaders. In fact, Caden, I think, leads the team in tackles. You mentioned Jesse Bates. That's going to be a battle of wits, almost a chess match between Derek Carr, Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates won that matchup significantly on several plays in the first time around. But I feel like Derek Carr finally has a good grasp of the offense. So even without Alvin Kamara, we've seen him have a lot of growing confidence in A.T. Perry, Juwan Johnson. We know he's familiar playing with Foster Moreau. So Derek's no longer force-feeding the ball to Chris Olave. It's going to open up opportunities for Olave when he spreads the ball around to Perry, Rashid Shaheed. I think that kid's got to get involved early, and not just as a deep receiver. You make Atlanta defend him all over the field. You get the ball in his hands on short passes, quick passes, rhythmic passes. Let him use that open field ability that got him voted to his first Pro Bowl. So it's not going to be any one guy, I think, that hurts the Atlanta defense. You have to give multiple guys the opportunity to do so, and keep Atlanta guessing. Which again, I go back to, while I believe that the game plan is probably going to be a little bit heavier tilted towards the pass, you have to have balance to prevent Atlanta from absolutely blitzing the hell out of your offensive line, because that's not going to end well.
Well, let's end our pregame with Daughter Drop. Our favorite show. We need like intro music. We need like The Price is Right. Come on down. We need something. That'll be in the budget for next season.
Yeah.
Get a whole sound machine going. Anyway, I'll open it up like this because I don't know. I doubt it, but I'm going to have to look it up. But I really doubt it. As a football, I wouldn't call myself a football historian. I think I'd leave that towards you, certainly Alan. I don't know if there's ever been a time in NFL history where a player led the league in rushing touchdowns and then the following season did not find the end zone, unless it was an injury, right? They tore their ACL in training camp or something. Okay. I don't know if that's ever happened. So my Daughter Drop to you, a long-winded way to ask the question is, will Jamal Williams score a rushing touchdown today? Daughter Drop.
I'm going to dot that. I like the way Jamal Williams was running the football in the second half against Tampa Bay after Kamara went out. And again, he's a much different type of runner, style of runner than Alvin is. But Atlanta, if when the New Orleans Saints get into the red zone, Atlanta knows that Kamara is not going to be on the field, and they know what Taysom Hill has done to them in the past. Therefore, I think it's going to give some opportunity for Jamal Williams to pick up some yardage. And yes, I see Jamal finally getting into the end zone, so I'm going to dot that.
All right. Oh, Fear, real quick before Bob asks, what time's the Buck Carolina game on? That is 1 o'clock, so we will know by 4:30, 5 o'clock Eastern time whether the Saints have won the NFC South or not. But all right, Bob.
My Daughter Drop. I'm going to go worst case scenario here. The Saints lose badly to the Falcons. Daughter Drop. Dennis Allen's job is still safe for 2024.
I mean, every report this week, right? Every single report, whether it be local media, national media, our own at the Saints News Network, they've removed. Remember, like 2 weeks ago, it was like, like anything can change, or like as of right now, like all those little like commas have been removed from articles. Like his job is secure. Um, do I love it? No. But is it the reality of the situation? Yes. Dennis Allen will be back regardless next season.
Yeah, and listen, we've said that for weeks. Not that either one of us like it. And I think we both believe that his job status was 100%, we'll say 98% secure in the Tampa Bay win last week. So yeah, I agree with that assessment.
All right, dot or drop. We've talked about this for a little bit. So dot or drop. Jimmy Graham scores this afternoon, and finally dunks the ball over the goalpost in what could be his final NFL game.
Dot, and I'm certainly rooting for it. I do believe that Jimmy Graham can still play. I think he's proven that. But remember, folks, he didn't play last year at all. He was essentially retired without being officially so. He only came back because it was the New Orleans Saints. And I think Jimmy is ready to move on to the next chapter of his life. But he loves the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints fans love him. This is in the Superdome. It's against the Atlanta Falcons. I think that Jimmy Graham scoring a touchdown in what could be his final game at the Superdome. First of all, if he gets into the end zone, there's zero doubt in my mind that he dunks the football. Unless it's a key situation, where it would the 15-yard penalty for the BS unsportsmanlike penalty, that would really penalize the team. If it's a comfortable situation, 100%, no doubt in my mind that Jimmy Graham dunks the football. And yes, I do think he gets into the end zone, because Atlanta has had trouble, against athletic tight ends. I think Jimmy and I think Juwan Johnson, could have some key plays today. So yeah, I would dot that.
Yeah, and the two things that kind of make me chuckle thinking about it is, remember, though it was not the Superdome, he bent the field goal post against Atlanta. And two, Jimmy's mentioned the 15-yard penalty. He's also mentioned the fine. There's a lot of GoFundMe out there. And as silly as it sounds, like I do think that Saints fans would pay his fine collectively. But I mean, he doesn't. I don't think he honestly cares that much. But like you said, if it's a key situation, maybe he doesn't. But if it's the first score of the game or a score late in the game, like there's no doubt in my mind if he gets in the end zone, that's what's going to happen. All right, we'll get one more two. Yeah, hit me, and then we'll do one more round, and we'll call it a day.
Okay, my daughter drop. I'm going to flip to the defensive side, and another guy who's had a pretty darn good career against the Atlanta Falcons. Cam Jordan will get 2 sacks of Atlanta quarterbacks today. Daughter drop.
God, I hope so. He needs it.
Yeah.
He needs it. I'll dot it because, yes, it's not Matt Ryan, but he has feasted on the Falcons over the years. I think he also knows the significance, the importance of this game.
Yep.
And shoot, he hasn't sacked. He's got, 2 on the year?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the first time in his career that he finishes with under 7 outside of his rookie year, right? That's hard. So I hope there's a little extra gas in the tank today. So I'll dot that.
And he looked healthy again last week against Tampa Bay for the first time in 3 or 4 weeks after dealing with that ankle injury. So I like the matchup there, and I agree with you. I hope so, not only for Cam but for this team.
They need it. I'll stick on the defensive side of the ball. No Marshawn Lattimore, right? I will note this: no Marshawn Lattimore, no Michael Thomas, and no Alvin Kamara. Kind of dreary last week of the season here, and those guys that were such key parts of like 17, 18, 19, 20, not available today. But without Marshawn Lattimore, the Saints have played very well with Paulson Adebo. Alante Taylor's had a very good year. Daughter dropped. The Saints defense forces 2 or more interceptions of Desmond Ridder today.
Interceptions or turnovers?
Interceptions.
Okay. Wow, that's a tough one. I'm going to drop that. I do think the Saints will get a couple turnovers today, and I can't see them getting two interceptions against Ritter. But again, Atlanta doesn't want to throw the ball unless they absolutely have to. So that does limit your opportunities. So yeah, I think that Saints pass defense will play Ritter and those receivers very well today. I think they'll get a couple turnovers, but I'm going to go with my betting line is they'll get one interception and force one or two fumbles, on strip sacks. But as far as two interceptions or more, I'm going to drop that.
All right, final one.
Back to the offense. Derek Carr, with daughter drop, Derek Carr will have over 300 yards passing today.
I'm going to dot that. Going into the last week, he led the league or was tied for the league lead. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if I can get that right. League lead for 300-yard games. I know a lot of those came in garbage time, but over the last 6, 7, 8 weeks, like Derek's played pretty well. He's starting to gel with these guys a little bit, and we're seeing a different Derek Carr now than we did early in the season. Big game. And what's the big knock on Derek Carr? No playoff wins, hasn't played well in big games. I think it's an opportunity to kind of flip the script, especially with a new football team for him this year. So I'm going to dot that he throws for 300. The Saints come out with the victory, and the rest you just kind of got to leave up to the football gods and see what happens. But I think the Saints win behind Derek Carr today. Bob, we're going to be back for a post-game show today. Do we have an official? Do we want to go right after the 1 o'clock or noon games and see if the Saints win the division? If we have to come back, we can. After the 4 o'clock games, or how do we want to play this hand?
Let's do this. Let's knowing that the Saints and Buccaneers both play at the same time. If the Saints win and Buccaneers lose, we know that the Saints are in the playoffs as the NFC South champs. So let's go on immediately. After both games have concluded, because we know the Saints are in, we know the seed they'll be. We just don't know where and when they'll play next week. Where as far as what day. If the Saints win and the Buccaneers win, then we don't know if the Saints are going to be in the playoffs. So we could push back. We could push back our post game until after the 4 o'clock games. How's that sound?
We'll just come on right after.
Right.
Okay, great. So you guys know the schedule. So I won't make a post yet. I won't get anything. I won't tease you guys and say we're coming on at 4 until we know the results. But for you guys that are here, kind of keep that bookmark in the back of your head that we're just waiting on results before we come on. Bob, where can people catch up with the very latest in your work with the Saints News Network, and especially if they want to get some article reading and more information in before the game starts?
Are we going to do predictions?
Oh yeah, I guess that's important, isn't it? Go ahead.
I'll go first since I threw the gauntlet down. The Atlanta Falcons are not a good football team. They're just, right. And yet, despite what Atlanta did to New Orleans earlier this year, I can't get it out of my head that the Saints had as much, 450 yards of offense, and we're deep in Atlanta territory in 8 of 9 possessions. I think they do move the ball on the Falcons defense, even without Alvin Kamara. We've seen this team since that Falcons game, ironically, play much better in the red zone. So I think they capitalize on their scoring opportunities. Stopping Atlanta's running game worries me, but I think that if the Saints can get a couple scores on the board early and get those defensive turnovers that Brendan and I had talked about, you get a couple scores up on the Falcons. You're not taking the run out completely, but you're definitely minimalizing it. I think that kind of scenario plays out. It does worry me without Alvin Kamara because I mean he's one of the best offensive players in the league. But earlier this week, I went with the Saints 30-17. As I said at the onset of the show, I felt even at the beginning of the week that Kamara wouldn't play. So I am going to stick with that. I think the Saints win this game 30-17, and I'm not even sure it'll be that close.
I'm a little opposite. Not about winning or losing. I think it'll be closer because it is an NFC South game. I think it'll be closer because both these teams need to win to keep any hope alive of winning the NFC South. I think we'll get a little bit of a dogfight. I think the Saints will pull away towards the end of the football game. And I'm really curious, just like we mentioned earlier, the confidence levels of Desmond Ridder. Even if he was well aware by like Friday that he was starting today, I don't know. I don't know how I'd react to that. You benched me twice. Now you're asking me to start again. Like it's weird. But I'm going to take the Saints in this game, 24-20. I think the scoreboard shows that it's closer than it actually is. But I do think for at least the first half, you get a really good dogfight between two teams that hate each other. So that'll be fun. That'll be absolutely fun. So we both have the Saints winning. Do we want to make predictions for the Carolina game?
Yeah, sure. I have a good feeling that the Saints get into the playoffs, but I do not believe that it'll be as division champs. I think Carolina will give Tampa Bay a little bit of a run, but it's hard to imagine a 2-14 team, where at least a chunk of the players and of that locker room hasn't mentally checked out. So I think I think Tampa Bay, pulls out that win, but it's gonna. Nothing is ever easy for Saints fans. It's going to cause most of Who Dat Nation to be glued to their scoreboard watching, late into the third quarter or early into the fourth. So I think it'll be close, but Tampa Bay pulls it out.
I'll be the optimist. Sports in Charlotte have been really tough lately. Between the Panthers, between the Hornets, between the football club or soccer team, it hasn't been great at all. And again, if you guys watch the show on Wednesday, I fully blame David Tepper for a lot of it. And
why can't we blame Dennis Allen? Dennis Allen and Derek Carr are responsible for everything else.
I mean, that's fine, I guess. I don't know how they improve or don't improve the economy of Charlotte, North Carolina, but I can blame David Tepper for that, for where I live. But that is what it is. I have some confidence. I mean, the Panthers played them really tight once. Panthers have nothing to play for outside of pride. And I've used this phrase a couple times this year. I think that's dangerous. I think when you play teams that have nothing to play for outside of embarrassing you, it's a little bit more fun for the players, right? There's a monkey off your back. You can just play free and make mistakes and not have to stress or look over your shoulder, worry about this or worry about that. I think it's dangerous to play. Tampa's played good football. They had a really bad game against New Orleans, and New Orleans made them look bad. I know that they're going to come in with a vengeance, and they're going to want to win the NFC South, but I think Carolina gives them a really good fight. I don't know if Carolina wins the game, but I'm going to be optimistic that it'll go late in the fourth quarter before we know the result of that game. It'll be low scoring, and I'll throw a score, and you guys can come up with whoever you think is going to win. I'm kind of taking the cop out of this one, but the final score is going to be 20-17, and I'll let you guys pick who you think the winner will be. But I would not sleep on the Panthers today. I really wouldn't. But all right, Bob, where can everybody catch up with you, your articles, your work with the Saints News Network, and hopefully more to come involving the Saints this season?
Folks, thank you for tuning in to the Bayou Blitz pregame show. And as Brendan and I both said, make sure you stay tuned to our social media pages so that way you'll know exactly when you're getting a postgame show from us today. It's only a question of when, what time-ish, and what we'll have to talk about. So keep an eye on those games and keep an eye on our pages where we'll update you when we're going to come back on the air. And the way to do that with me is Bob Rose, ROSE on Facebook, at Bobby R 2613 on Twitter. You can follow all of my articles during the week, not only on my personal pages, but also the Saints News Network at Saints News on Twitter, the SI.com team page, and of course our Bayou Blitz Facebook group and Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod.
For myself, you can follow me just about everywhere at BT Boylan. Like Bob said, the Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod. Facebook group that may or may not get renamed. Bayou Blitz, the Bayou Blitz Facebook group may be the Bayou Blitz Mafia by the end of the year. We'll see. We're still really close to 2,000. Let's take one check, make sure we didn't get like an extra follower or two that put us over. But Bob and I said there would be a magic number that gets us to doing some more exclusive stuff in that group. We're still at 1.9. So let's get over 2,000, especially if the Saints make the playoffs today. It would be a nice little treat. But guys, we thank you so much for tuning in this morning. Big day for the New Orleans Saints. I know we're all going to be scoreboard watching. Like Bob said, just keep up with our social media channels, keep up with the scoreboards around the league, and you'll know when we're coming on live to discuss either there's either the Saints making the playoffs or the Saints not making the playoffs. That's really what it boils down to. But again, we thank you so much for all your love, your support this season. You guys go get ready for kickoff, and we will see you in the post game. Until then, find peace, spread love, practice positivity, and who dat?
Who dat?